Greetings. Welcome to Dr. Neil's Spiritual Awakening to Non-Duality. This is Dr. Connie Zweig, and I'll be interviewing my husband who lives in spiritual awakening. You may have heard about this or read about it, but you may not know someone who lives it day to day. We'll be exploring how non-duality developed in Dr. Neil as I've observed it over 25 years, and as he directly experiences it every day. Each podcast will explore a different theme. We look forward to you joining us. Hi, welcome back to the podcast. Today we're going to talk about a kind of overview of Neil's evolution of consciousness and how he woke up step by step to the profound realization that it's all one life, that reality is non-dual, and that everything everywhere is basically, we could call it emptiness or consciousness. So, Neil, how did this start?
I think I'm going to go back to Dr. Neat, who I observed using a pendulum to look into my body and my mind and to see what the problems were, what the solutions were. So that kind of fascinated me, and I started to use the pendulum myself. So I would ask questions, and the pendulum would give me answers yes or no or maybe. Or sometimes I'd use diagrams that like a circle with 12 divisions so that I could see what was going on and give me complex answers. And I thought this was kind of in an intuitive sense initially. So I thought I was connecting with some part of me that intuitively knew or was part of the.
Well, it may have started that way. It may have started with opening your intuition.
Yeah, well, maybe it started with my intuition or connecting with the place where everything exists. So that's where it sort of began. And I started to use this to find out things about life, what decisions should be made. And I started to trust it more because it seemed to give me good advice.
And then later you used it with patients.
Yeah. So later on, I would, before I saw a patient, I never did it in front of patients. Before I saw them, I would do what I'd call a reading and find out where their problems originated, what age, what stage, and what their treatment should be and what their prognosis was. And then I saw them and analyzed the situation and found out that my pendulum knowing was accurate. So it was kind of like mind-blowing because
there was a validation process.
Yeah, it actually validated it. And, some people might say, well, that's just the pendulum moving. But that I've validated it. It was correct according to my intellect and my training and my life. And
so that continued to evolve from psychic intuitive framework to what you called the knower.
Yeah, well, there was a part of me that was sort of traveling places. So I would imagine that this place I was going to, this place of knowledge, was a place I was traveling to. And I was reaching beyond my ego to a place where somehow all the answers to all the questions were known. The only thing that I couldn't access was my ego story, my own personal story. And I kind of figured that that was because I needed to live it, not to actually know about it. I needed to make decisions and live the human life.
So when you say traveling, it sounds like you're separate from it.
Yeah, it felt like it was separate from me.
So it was a state, knowing was a state in you, and yet it subjectively felt like you had to go somewhere.
Yeah, well, I had to go to the state the pendulum was accessing.
Okay. And so there's an observer and there's the state of knowing, and you're moving there. And that's the initial experience. And then what happened? Like, let's say you're knowing something about the tree. So then what happened?
I was guided to start to look at this not as going somewhere, but this was the home of all knowledge. Some people would say the Akashic records, but it was beyond the Akashic records. It was a place where all knowledge existed, and I kind of felt that I was one with it. And that's because I was pushed into acknowledging that by an old friend who said, claim it. Claim that that is you.
I am the knower.
I am the knower, or the knowing. Now I see it as the knowing. And that connected with my sort of religious background, Judaism, where God is omniscient, all-knowing. So there was a sort of validation that there's a place where you know everything, or can know everything, except the ego story.
So you recognized that you weren't actually separate from that state.
No, I was one with that state, and also able to separate myself from that state and ask questions of that state. So there was this dual process of non-duality, of being one with it, and duality, being an observer or able to ask questions of it.
And that's kind of been a theme for you, living the dual and the non-dual states.
Yes, I don't quite believe that one totally separates oneself from the dual state into the non-dual state. I think that's a temporary stage. Some people do that when they're intense about their practice. They feel that they're non-dual. But the duality wakes up sooner or later as well.
So it feels like you're connecting to something, which is the duality, but the reality is that you are that thing, whether it's me or the tree or the galaxy or the knower.
Both are true.
Both are true.
Yeah. So, we in spiritual practices, one learns to deny the ego, to deny the duality in order to actually reach the non-duality. So there's a technique or practice to do that. But the truth about it is both are real. That's a technique that is to give you access.
And so then what happened was your body emptied out.
Yeah. Well, the knowing became cosmic.
Okay.
In other words, I was able to look at the galaxy. I was able to be everywhere. So I recognized that the knower, the knowing, was not local. And so that's how I could access knowing or became the knower, was because I was everywhere. So
it wasn't just a local object.
No, not just an object, say, in the room or you thinking about it. Became ability to see things beyond time, space, beyond locality, to know them.
And so it's not really, it's seeing it, but it's also being it.
It's being it and seeing it and feeling it and hearing it. And its subtle senses of taste and smell were not particularly well developed, but the others are.
Okay, and so then your body shifted.
Yes, then I kind of moved from this abstract knowing, cosmic sense of being everywhere, to being local in the body. So my body seemed to contain everything. So the galaxy and the consciousness and all the physical reality became embedded in my body. I was still identified with it all, but it was physical, and my body was the vehicle of consciousness.
So your body had to be emptied first. It was empty. I remember you used the word transparent.
That came later.
Oh, okay. Okay, so this is an earlier stage.
Yeah, so firstly, I came into the body and experienced myself as a body, and then the body started to expand. So it was not just local, it expanded to fill the room, expanded to fill the country, expanded to fill the cosmos and the galaxy, the universe, the physical universe. So the body became cosmic, so not just local. So yeah, so it was both local and everywhere in the physical universe.
So again, separate and non-dual.
Separate because I was one with the body, and non-dual in that I could observe.
Well, that's not non-dual. So separate, observing it, and non-dual because
Being-
everything was in it.
Being, yeah.
Okay. So then you had this experience of astral projection.
Yeah. So what happened was I was meditating and I noticed that my body, was emptying out, was transparent, which was a new sensation, which was kind of curious. So I followed it and found that I moved my awareness to the astral plane. And what was interesting about the astral plane was it was more vivid than my previous knowledge and awareness of it, which I did have. I mean, I could actually go visit people who were dead and communicate with them beforehand.
But that was the traveler.
Yeah, I was a traveler.
It was dualistic.
And that was auditory and visual. But now, with astral projecting, I found that I had left my physical body behind and that I was connected with beings, smell and taste, as well as vivid sensory experience. So it became much more real. And then with time, that moved to a place where rather than visiting people and traveling, I became one with them and then became one with the whole astral plane.
So there was a non-dual experience of your astral body in the astral plane.
Yes. And I kind of realized that this was the divine creating the physical universe, which I was one with. The divine was creating the astral universe. And gradually that moved up to include the mental universe, buddhic, the atmic, celestial universe. So the oneness expanded to include all of those and was the manifestation of the divine creating these planes. It sort of originated with a Big Bang, which scientists believe is a physical process in the physical universe, but it also exists on all these other planes, the astral plane, the mental plane, the buddhic plane, the atmic plane, the celestial plane. So it was this one point, and I know this because I can go there, outside of time as well as space. And so the Big Bang was an explosion that created the physical universe, and all of the other universes. And I was both an observer and one with it all. And that was the sense of identifying with manifestation, the sense of creation happening. And as it happens, it starts off pretty primitively with a beginning manifestation of these different levels of cosmic planes, and then becomes more and more detailed.
So the manifestation from the source took place over time.
Yeah, it has that feeling, truth about it is you go more subtly. Time is an illusion.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's also timeless in every moment.
Yeah, so the sort of way of looking at it from a timeless point of view is that everything is manifesting every moment rather than the way human beings normally see it as a continuous time frame. It's like the entire cosmos has manifested and then manifests again. Just like this hand is moving across the screen. I'm moving, the ego thinks it's moving this hand, but from a divine perspective, the whole universe is moving every second.
So Recently, you've been talking about a golden orb.
Yeah, it seems to be something that exists at the end of all creation. It includes everything, the physical universe, the astral, mental, all the different planes. And there's a creator, the creative process in the center, and it's non-personal. It's not a personal creator. So it's
Is it more than one being? Is it?
yeah, it's a whole bunch of beings who function to create the cosmos. And what they're drawing on is the energy of creation. And they're living it out, like embodying it, just like we embody these bodies. So rather than one creator, there's beings that are manifesting as the creative process. And that's my kind of edge awareness.
Okay. Shall we come back to this present moment? Is there anything you want to say about what you're experiencing?
It's infinite. The unfoldment of consciousness just keeps growing and going places. I would urge people who are awake to keep exploring. Don't stop there. Keep exploring because there's more and more and more. You know, it's infinite, the actual variety. It's almost like it's created a more complex form in order for me and others to grow.
Well, for you, I think the initial waking up was the beginning.
Yes.
That's what you're saying.
Waking up seems to happen at the beginning, although I had duality before I had waking up.
Well, everybody has duality.
Yeah, I had a vast duality.
You had a vast duality. Do you mean a non-duality?
Well, I firstly thought that when I looked at the galaxy, I was looking at something outside of myself. And then I joined with the galaxy and realized that I was one.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So my kind of growth process is looking at as an observer and then joining with the observed to go beyond the subject object and process, be one with whatever is.
So the knowing and the observing became non-local before they became non-dual. You were looking at the galaxy and then you became the galaxy. That's what you're saying?
Correct. And that's been my general process. So looking at a tree, first process is to actually observe the tree, not to be one with the tree, to observe the tree, to look deeply into the nature of the tree, the elements of the astral and
subtle
planes,
subtle perceptions.
subtle planes, subtle perceptions. And then to realize that the essence of me is is the same as the essence of the tree, and that I am one with the tree. That came afterwards.
Yeah, so wherever you are, our listeners, and thank you for listening, whatever your state or stage of consciousness, I think what Neil is saying is there's more. And so stay with your practices, because we have friends who have some expanded experiences and then they stop. They just kind of lose the motivation to continue to explore. And for some people with certain Kundalini risings, it continues anyway, whether you meditate or do inquiry or not. But for other people, it's important, what I'm hearing you say, is to stay open and continue exploring because the unfolding can go on.
It does go on. So
yeah.
It can go on very slowly for some people and more rapidly for those that put attention to it.
Okay, so thank you for listening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in today. If you found our discussion insightful, there's a good chance your friends will too. And we'd love it if you could take a moment to share this episode with a friend who you believe would appreciate it. Help us spread the word and reach more people. And follow us on any platform. Turn on your episode notifications so you never miss new content. Thanks for being part of our podcasting journey.